Welcome everybody to episode number, I don't know what number we're on Unspeakable Bliss. Today, my guest is a friend of mine here on the mountain, Caroline Hopp. Gosh, I should really ask how to say it, right? Hopp, okay. How do I say your name before I introduce you? And she is I pulled her biography off of her website here. She's a coach, a psychologist, an authentic tantrika teacher, a yoga teacher. She utilizes shadow work and trauma healing. And this is a translation from German to English, so bear with me. And one thing above all, women. I support you in loving your body and living out your sexuality freely and authentically. My deepest belief is that every human being, this is her little message to those on her bio. My deepest belief is that every human being deserves to experience a life full of pleasure and deep connection with themselves and others. For me, this includes, in particular, healing the relationship with one's own body and being able to live out one's own sexuality authentically. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much for having me. It's a blast. And I'm also happy, to share myself and what I do in English, because I've not been doing that so much since I'm from Germany. And it's been requested also from, various sources. So I'm happy we're having this conversation today.
Including myself. I've requested that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a fun little place to begin. So I knew that Caroline did something around sexuality and something around Tantra and healing work, but I honestly wasn't really sure. And so probably less than a week ago, we were at Chelsea, a mutual friend of ours birthday party. And we were sitting there and I started asking you about what is Tantra. And oh, that's right. We have a title for this podcast. Normally I don't title until after. The title, at least part of it, is Demystifying Tantra. And so I explained what it means to me. And you were basically said, you're like, yeah, that's exactly it. And I was awesome, cool. And that inspired me to want to talk to you here to shed some light on some of these things, at least in part. That's one thing I want to do in our conversation, on shedding light on something that I think is a lot of times taken to be this, like, it's just about sexuality sort of thing. Tantra is just about sex. And well, I won't say too much more about it. I wonder if you could offer your perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. It's actually something that is really dear to my heart. And I feel like it's also part of my mission, the demystifying of it and teaching an authentic way, even though I don't, people always, they ask me, what is Tantra? And in the past, I used to say, I don't know. What do I know what Tantra is? So I don't claim to have the knowledge or the wisdom to have the definition of Tantra that is correct for everyone on this planet. But at the same time, I feel it's really been growing in the consciousness and the popularity over the last years, at least in the bubble that I tend to float around. I feel like it's getting bigger and bigger, and people are really interested into Tantra. And usually what I get is, when people hear Tantra, they think sex. Okay, this has something to do with sex. And of course, there's a little bit of truth inside of it. Otherwise, these ideas wouldn't exist. But it's so much more than that. And it's for sure not just sex, right?
Right.
Because then it would just be sex and not Tantra. So we could just keep it as that.
Yeah.
So for me, and how I learned it, which I think is an authentic way from the Indian tradition, because there's also different tantric traditions. There's the Tao tradition, there's the Indian tradition. It's a path that helps you to find yourself, basically. So it's about the revelation of the true self. So who are you? Like, that really interesting question that some people might ask themselves if they're, interested in self-inquiry, or understanding why they are on this planet and why they're doing the things they do. And Tantra really is a way of helping you understand that or uncover that in a way. So it gives you certain practices and ideas and tools to access your real self, which is love in the end, by the way. So that would be like a very short definition of what it is.
Yeah. I want to actually recap what it was I was sharing with you when we began talking about it. And I love the way you began, because ultimately my answer in any realm, especially since I do work as a facilitator, or I find myself in that role often, and work as a student, I find myself in that role often. But my number one thing that I say is I don't know. I don't actually know, but these are kind of ideas that I have and things that have seemed to be helpful. But the ideas that I was so surprised to come to find with Tantra was when one of my teachers, I read his background, Rupert Spira, I had mentioned him to you. He studied Kashmir Shaivism. And then when I heard his explanation that Tantra it's the going into life, going into the feelings, whatever I'm feeling, going into, like, even when I drink this water, and every single moment, sort of, in the way I think of it, is in life, in the world. Whereas the opposite, or the other kind of approach, is I'm none of these things to realize I am nothing but pure consciousness, or, as you said, ultimately to get to the same goal, which is love, to see oneself as an expression of that. So when I heard that explanation, I said, man, saying Tantra is sex would be like saying that would be like pointing to one thing in the world and saying that's the whole world. It just wouldn't make sense. So that kind of blew my mind open as to what this what it actually is.
What I really love about it is that, and I like to use the phrase my truth is, and usually my truth at this moment is, because it also changes and when I evolve. So my truth might change in the next hour or in the next year,
Sure.
For how I understand it, and my truth about Tantra right now is that it's not a dualistic path. So meaning that in Tantra, everything is sacred and everything is God. So I am God, this couch is God, like this stick is God, my computer is God. So basically everything is God, because it's created by the manifestation, and there is nothing that the manifestation would create that is not perfect or whole in its existence. So I think that's what you just said, right? So it's this idea of, okay, I don't have to look for God or ultimate consciousness outside of myself. It's not separate from me. It's not something I need to reach. It is actually inside of me and inside of everything that is around me that I can perceive with my senses, and I just have forgotten. I just forgot. So I can use these practices and these tools to remember, to come back to that. So it's not something outside of me, it's basically inside of me and inside of everything and everyone else, which is a perspective that I love in a way, and that really resonates with how I see the world, and also just with, I don't know, with my soul on an energetic level.
I mean, it blows my mind and my heart open, but my mind specifically, when it comes to when I look around in the world and I see suffering, or even my own suffering, if I'm going through a hard time, and I go, I guess in some way it creates a little bit of a separation between myself and identifying with whatever kind of mental image that I have of myself. Or there's this is what I guess I could say. There's a huge sense of awe and wonder as to how it's like my mind doesn't want to accept that it's all God, When there's some crazy stuff that's happening, then I'm like, no, there's no way that that's God. And then I can kind of in playing that out right there, I can, do the meta thing where I look at myself and I'm like, well, look at yourself, Christopher. Look at how is that very, very godly? So yeah, I mean, I do fundamentally, I agree with what you're saying. And there's a lot of, well, that's the thing. There's a lot of people in the world that even God, it appears, can appear to be in complete and total disagreement with the message that you and I are talking about right here.
Of course. Yeah. and I think there's also the other side of it where it could be very, I don't know, like the egoic mind or the ego could also pick up on that, like, wow, I'm God. I am the fucking embodied entitlement, so I can do whatever the fuck I want because I am this godly creature, right? And that's not the idea of it.
Exactly.
And I think, I don't know if that is happening too much. So like when I say, okay, I am God, I say it from time to time and and I mean it, but I don't mean it in a way, okay, I am superior or I am better or I don't know. It's just like if everything and everyone is God, we're all the same.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's also important to mention.
Well, I think that's absolutely important to mention as well, because there's this piece of humility that comes with that, because it's what we're saying. If I understand what you're saying correctly, Caroline, correct me if this is not what you're saying, but I'm understanding that it's something like, I am that, but so is everything. There's nothing that is not that. And I don't necessarily think that I'll just speak for myself here. I don't have a memory of being the one that sat as God before I created the world and said, I'm going to create the world and create it. I am that, but I'm also a part of it. And I don't have a memory. Do you have a memory of being the one that created this whole thing?
No.
No, right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, but what's so fascinating about this recently, this has been recent in the mountain community that Caroline and I both live on. I've been hearing people say how damaging it is that people say to be claiming to be gods and goddesses in this kind of egoic and separate way from everyone else. But I haven't actually seen it. So you know what I'm saying? Like, I hear people talking about how that's not a good thing, but in my experience, I haven't really been at a ceremony or something where I see someone like proclaiming, but that's just from my perspective, I guess. So it's interesting that I don't see that either, but I hear people talking about how that's not good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it requires a lot of humbleness for sure.
Yeah.
And I think so. This is how I see Tantra, and what I learned about it is that it's not an easy path because of this. All like everything Tantra says, everything is sacred, and everything that is in the manifestation is there to lead you to enlightenment or the revelation of the self or whatever you want to call it. So use it. So that's why it's also including sex and pleasure and money and power and all these things. It's like, okay, this is here. This is not here because it's bad, because there's not something that is inherently bad that is created by the manifestation. But you need to have a certain amount of discernment, discipline, and humbleness to really work with these things and approach that. And I think that is what makes it challenging and difficult for a lot of people. Because if you don't bring the discipline and this discernment, it's very easy to get lost in these pleasurable sensation and experience that you can have while being on a tantric path, right? So if I just stay with the sexuality, and that is actually also my truth why Tantra has become so famous in the Western world, because it says yes to sexuality compared to other spiritual paths that are more like, better stay away from that, and just like very little, because this is dangerous. And there is some truth in it, because it's not dangerous in its nature, but it's very easy to get lost in it. if you're not having this, okay, what is my intention behind it? And actually, if you want to live a tantric life, it's basically about becoming aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So what is your intention? And are you offering the things you are doing to God? We call that consecration in Tantra. So as long as I am aware of that, and I am consecrating my actions, basically my whole life, my work, my sexual encounters, my whatever I do, I think I'll be good because I have a very clear intention. But when I'm getting lost in the pleasures and just focusing on that, that is where it gets dangerous, and where this like everyone's god or goddess can be abused.
Sure. Yeah. I guess if you're playing with fire, you can get burned.
Yes.
I was thinking about that.
You need to learn how to play with the fire.
Right. I saw there's a sentence on your Instagram. There's something about using the fire, and that's what made me.
Yeah, it says if you want to live a life of fire, you cannot be afraid to burn. And that's actually also, you know, it's very much my truth that Tantra is the tantric path, like the real authentic tantric path, how I understand it, is not for everyone, because it requires this discipline and also this practice, right? And that also leads to, if you're really going down that road, all your shadows and all your shit and all these things are going to come up every once in a while, and that is uncomfortable. It's not nice, you know. I mean, at some point you can also start enjoying it and you know, get better at it, but especially in the beginning, I find it is very challenging for a lot of people to actually face their own shit. And if you go for a real tantric path and are not just about having sex with multiple people and calling it spirituality, that's what's going to happen, and you have to be ready and open for that. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and it's not going to be authentic Tantra.
So, I guess I'm taking this in a little bit of a different direction, but I'm curious because I don't even know myself. Well, to some extent I do, because we've had one kind of deep dive connection before. But how did you, long or short version, you're welcome to share, how did you wind up on a mountain in Costa Rica talking to me about what you're talking about right now? Not exactly the point, but you get what I mean, right? You know, how did these practices, these things come to be so key and important in your life?
Yeah, I feel like ever since I have been little, I've always been asking questions, and I've always been questioning what's happening in the world. And there were a lot of things that really made no sense to me, also related to like suffering of a lot of people suffering from hunger, not having water to drink, and these things. I was like, well, there's so many people with so much money. I don't really understand why is this even happening? And I feel this mindset has brought me to question basically everything that I learned growing up over and over again. And at some point, like 10, 11 years ago, I developed an eating disorder. So I had bulimia, and I went to therapy. So I went into self-inquiry, basically, learning about myself, learning about my family. And at some point, I also found spirituality, and I found yoga. And that was the first thing, I guess. That was like my entrance point into, I would say, other perspectives on how the world is functioning. And from there, it was just, you know, my own evolution. Like yoga led to meditation, led to vipassana, and led to separating from a long-term partner, finding a new partner, getting my libido back, and suddenly having very intense sex with someone. Where I was like, wow, what did I do like before that, you know? And then discovering, oh, this is actually tantric in a way, without me framing it like that, on
Mhm.
knowing that this is like tantric. And then I somehow, I was just hooked up and I was interested, and I started reading books and stuff. And interestingly enough, like looking back on it, like the sexual path or the sexual side of myself has been very important for me already when I was 15.
Mhm.
Much more than compared to, my friends at that time. And I always said, because I'm a psychologist, and I always said, I'm going to be a sex therapist. At some point, I'm going to be a sex therapist. And I lost track of that during my studies and bulimia and all these things. But I feel like through Tantra, I came back to that from a more holistic perspective.
Mhm.
And it's still, even though, I teach all the aspects of Tantra, I find that the part about sexuality is actually a really important one, because I feel that's the one where most of the abuse is happening in our world. So I feel like the education around that topic is really, really important, at least for me. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and how I came to this mountain is just, one thing came to the other. I never really wanted to live in Germany, and now I'm here.
Well, I want to ask you about addiction, because what I can see, it seems to be pretty bad. At least the numbers and the statistics that I see
Yeah.
worldwide, and I think a really good majority of people have, in some way or another, dealt with addiction. I know even myself, after doing a Vipassana retreat, I said, I'm like, okay, I'm addicted to thinking because I can't stop it. It's not helping me. And it's, so I'm curious, what was there a moment? What did it have to do with some of the spiritual work you were getting into? What was the healing process like out of bulimia? Because that's not, that's a pretty, I mean, I know all addiction is serious, but bulimia it can be quite a challenging one to heal.
Well, for me, it was actually the healing of the relationship with my body. So I totally feel you when you talk about a lot of thinking and the mind, because that's also something that's very familiar to me.
Yeah.
And especially then, studying psychology and at the same time going to therapy was like the mind overload. Like you can't imagine, and in 5 years of doing therapy, there was not one session where we were talking about my body, how my body's feeling, what I had been doing to my body, because I had literally been abusing it for years, with that eating disorder, but that was never a topic, and at some point I was like, I was healing, my symptoms got better, it got less, but it wouldn't go away completely. And I was like, what is this? I need help. I need something else. This is not working in a way. And so I was just basically very desperately looking online for ideas. And for me, it actually started with becoming a vegan. And that helped me get rid of my symptoms. And I think it's not necessarily, I'm not vegan anymore, but I was a very strict vegan for like around about 2 years. And I think it brought the consciousness of my actions into my system, into my reality, which I did not have before. So it's like, okay, why am I choosing to eat this? What am I putting inside my body? And that shifted something, because that was the first time I really actually considered my body as a being I have a relationship to. And from that on, then with the yoga, I started, to actually feel my body, feel pain in my body, starting to feel my emotions, not from a mind perspective, because I had a lot of emotions. That, is why I was binging and purging in the end, because I was overwhelmed by the intensity and the amount of my emotions, and I couldn't handle them. And then it's somehow I was just like, oh wow, okay, I feel this in this particular part of my body. And what if I just allow that?
what's happening then? And then I start crying, for example, and then it's actually a release. Whereas before that, I used to cry a lot, but it was more this kind of like even bringing more tension into my body, you know, it was not releasing anything. It was just a cry of frustration, basically. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that was really the shifting point, like coming back to the body and to the messages the body has for me.
Wow. Yeah. This, it reminds me of the whole topic of what we're talking about with Tantra, and including the form instead of, from my study and look into different spiritual practices, it feels like there can sometimes be a denial of the flesh, a denial of the world, a denial, suppression, et cetera, et cetera. And who knows, maybe it's those things on a collective level that results in people individually having addictions with certain things, because what's going around when we look around at people that are influencing our upbringing. It's just kind of connecting that. Wow.
I think, the root, like what lies behind all addiction is actually a longing for being whole. And because, I mean, what are people doing that have an addiction? They're trying to fill something like an emptiness inside of them. And I think the way out of the addiction is actually just to go into that emptiness, become that emptiness, feel it, and then you move through it. Because there is nothing externally that will ever fill that. And even if you're not like a full-on addict with whatever substance or whatever it is that you're addicted to, I think almost everyone on the planet does it, you know, in some amount. And I do it at some point, like sometimes when I feel like empty and I don't want to go into that feeling, I don't want to feel it, I'll, I don't know, watch something on Netflix or call someone, or I don't know. It's very human also in a way. And I think it's about the consciousness, the awareness about that, and then also finding moderation and balance with that. So not losing yourself and never going into those places that feel challenging, and actually start to feel and connect back with the body and the sensations in the body.
Yeah, I've myself had experiences, but have worked with lots of people, whether it's grief or just some really challenging emotion, and there's words like, a profound emptiness, void, numbness. And sometimes, well, I would just say this as a first step. I if it feels appropriate, it's like this every single time, but if it feels appropriate, I'll make an invitation to just be with that as it is, without the idea that we need to be with this emptiness so that it goes away. Right? I'm not doing it. I'm doing it as a practice with them, just to bring to try and inspire a neutrality, this kind of neutrality and curiosity, if we're fortunate to be curious, to be like, well, what is this thing that we're calling anxiety or depression, or like what really is? It's in another way, it's the opposite of the self-inquiry. If I'm like, who am I, what am I? It's like, okay, there's this emotion that I'm feeling, maybe it's in my chest or my throat or whatever. Let's just be with it. Let's just see what it is. And then I would say, at least from my experience, at least 70% of the time, there does happen to be a dissolving or release of some kind, or a letting go. And I think it's got something to do with not running away from it, just being with it, and also questioning what it actually is. Because that's the thing that I say often is, it's not what we think it is. What we think it is this image that we're afraid of, or that we have to ignore and go watch Netflix or whatever it is. But there in some cases could be a profound wholeness to the point that you said, the point of or what the solution in a way to addiction is. It's to feel whole.
Yes, I agree.
Would you be open to a little experiment?
Of course.
Is there a because I almost did it with what I said, but I want to see if you can offer us something. Is there some kind of a brief practice that you could right now lead us through and lead the listeners through, as far as I guess Tantra? Yeah, I suppose Tantra, or whatever's present to you. If there's some other kind of practice you would want to lead.
Well, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is basically what you just said.
Yeah, okay.
Like what you just explained. Do you want to go into that? Shall we do that for a moment, or?
If if you want to.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Well, I think it could be valuable for the listener, as long as they're not driving. I think we could just say that. Don't do this and drive, please.
Yeah, don't do this when you're driving. Okay, I'll just guide you through, and everyone that's listening can just join. Okay, so I invite you to close your eyes if it feels safe and comfortable, and take a comfortable seat. And then to start with, just have 3 clearing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. 2 more times. Deep inhale. You can exhale with sound if you want. And then 1 more time. Deep inhale. Sigh it out. And then just returning to natural breath. Going inward with the attention. Going into the body. And maybe just start with just becoming aware of your sit bones being connected to a chair. Becoming aware of the connection between your skin and your clothing. And then just becoming aware of every sensation in the body. What sensations are present, are alive in this moment? And it could be anything, could be just a feeling of being cold, could be pain, could be tingling, could be pressure, could be anything. Becoming aware of this sensation, as well as of the location of that sensation in the body. So where is it located? Where can you experience it the most? And then whatever it is that you are experiencing, can you just allow it? Can you not put a label on it? Good or bad, comfortable, uncomfortable? Can you just let it be the way it is? Without judgment, and also without the desire to change it or contain it. So basically, no attachment to what's alive in you right now, just the pure acceptance of it, allowing it, simply feeling it. And if you want to go a little bit deeper into this, I invite you to take that one thing, that one sensation that is the most present right now, locate it in your body, feel into that body part, feel that sensation. And then from there, let it expand. Let it expand into your whole body. So from whatever is there and wherever it is in your body, let it become bigger. Give that sensation the permission to expand, to take over, basically, and surrender into it. And you can even extend it beyond the physical body, more into your energetic bodies around the physical body. And just allow it. Just feel it. There's really nothing to do except feeling what's going on, what's alive. And I invite you to just be very aware if the quality of what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, is changing naturally through this process of simply allowing it. And how that quality is changing. And from here, I'm going to invite you to take another deep breath. And with the exhale, I invite you to give whatever it is that is alive in you right now, which could be completely different from 2 minutes ago, to give that an authentic expression through breath, sound, and movement. So deep inhale. exhale, find your expression. And then just continue with that as long as you feel complete. If there's like more impulses coming from the body for more movement or sound, just allow that to happen until you feel complete.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It's a very simple, it's so simple, basically. It's just allowing the feelings.
Yeah.
And usually what happens when I guide people through that process is, you know, I have them also like tell me what's going on. And so I just guide them through it. And naturally, if we allow the feelings that come up to just be, they will change. I don't know, maybe you have experienced that as well in what you were going through, but it's just like, okay, if I feel a pressure here and then I allow the pressure to extend and really go into it, the pressure might evolve into sadness or into anger or into frustration. So it's just this natural alchemy, basically, that's happening if we allow what's there to actually be felt by us.
Yeah. Yeah. When I do things like this, I go through it sort of quicker. So having you guide me through it was a very sweet reminder to slow down.
I do this with people for like 60 to 90 minutes. So
Oh, wow.
we're just doing that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a very releasing process. Can also be intense, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share with you a little bit about what my experience was like
Please.
just then. The first thing I became aware of was this sensation in my throat, which I'm no stranger to this sensation in my throat. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But the second thing that I became aware of is how hot my body is physically. I'm like, I mean, you know, I got enough confidence too. I'm that as well. Let's be honest. I said that.
Gods in flesh.
Right. That's right. Anyway, yeah, just like, and I actually touched my lower back. I'm like, oh, I'm sweating. And then I said, it's noon. I'm in Costa Rica, but it's just so funny to bring attention to that, because before we began, I didn't realize how hot my body was. I didn't realize how, I'm like, damn, I'm really freaking hot. Is it because we're doing this until my body's actually heating up? Or was I this hot and I just was so in the zone with the conversation that I'm having that I'm like, no time to feel that I'm hot. Something like that. Oh goodness. So that was cool. It was hot and it was cool at the same time. And then the other, this throat thing, Caroline, I have a whole story. I have a whole kind of trauma healing narrative around this sensation that arises in my throat. And I'm saying that it's a story because ultimately when I'm with it, I don't know what this is. It's mystery. Like it's this mysterious, it feels like I'm being choked from one perspective, but it also feels like I'll just tell you about other really profound experiences I've had with this, where it feels like I want to say something, but I don't know what to say. Like I'm incapable of speaking. I used to have a lisp. So I have all these like narratives and stories around what it means that I have a ball in my throat. But through really incredible experiences similar to this one, which this was reminding me of, it's also my power. It's like the sensation doesn't change, but my entire relationship to it's as though that the music that Christopher is here to play and to bring into earth is anchored by this feeling, and it's going to be there until I've shared my message and I've done the work that I come to do. So it's actually something that I was fearing and had all this all these, I don't know what else to call it other than fear around. And then when I look at it from a different perspective, I go, oh my God, it's actually an incredible amount of love. It's an incredible amount of love that I have for you, for the world, for myself, for everyone. And it's coming from this place of desiring to bring the best forth out of me. And so, that it reminded me of that in a very sweet way.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's not what I think it is. That's the point.
I mean, I feel like, we give meaning to things. If I wanted something to mean something, I put that meaning, and in the end, it's just because I have a feeling, and I want this to mean that because that's what I want. Right. So, if it is your truth, if it is true for you, it's true for you because you give that meaning to it. Yeah.
I don't really know where to go from here. After having that experience, I'm just more like, okay, chilled out.
Yeah, that's good. How is your body feeling? You're still hot?
Yeah, I'm still quite warm, but it's strange. I'm gonna have to keep more of an eye on this because I have this, again, a story that I'm sitting here in the shade, and so I shouldn't be this hot, but I'm my lower back is sweating, and I'm not it's not like I get a little nervous from time to time. That's got everything to do with that throat thing, but I know it's not coming from nervousness because of our conversation. So
I mean, you also have a lot of muscles, and muscles create heat, so maybe you're just
right. True. I'm just anabolic. Burn it up.
Yeah. Well, are you open for me to ask you a question?
Absolutely, please. That's what, again, like I shared with you before, I enjoy our conversation to be one that's like a dialogue where anything goes. So please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, other than what we talked about, what Tantra is for you, what Tantra is for me, like, do you have any like practical experience with Tantra? Like in any tantric teachings or containers, or I don't know, even temple nights or whatsoever? I would be curious to know about that.
Yeah. No, there was a temple night that was happening here on the mountain last year before Zodka and I went and did our little United States and Europe tour, but we didn't go. It didn't feel like we weren't feeling both that, yes, let's go and have that experience. Now I have had experiences on my own with Zlodka, practices with clients, but it's pretty much exclusively in the way that you just did that exercise. What I'm saying. So outside of that, I don't know that I could say I've had any. I guess I don't know exactly what experiences you're asking about.
I don't know either.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So outside of the kind of thing that we did, and then again, some practices from the Magdalene manuscripts that Zlodka and I have done together with each other. Other than that, I don't know if again, like I said, I don't know exactly what it is you're asking about, so I don't know how to answer the question exactly.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious about experiences that also have to do with the practice of conscious sexuality, because I have kind of an ambivalent relationship to that myself. So I've over the last years, going through various trainings, I have been in different temple night settings and settings where there was facilitated conscious sexuality practices happening, and I've also facilitated temples myself, and it's just something. It can be very beautiful if it is really sacred, but in this scene of I don't know how to call it, like conscious sexuality or sex positivity, I have come to find there is this tendency to call something a tantric temple night or a tantric sexuality event, and in the end it's just a sex party or a play party, because there is no intentionality, there's no sacredness. It's basically just, okay, you know, we want to have fun and have a justification for it, so we don't have to feel bad for it. It's something I like. I mean, of course, this is my judgment about it, and it's just something where I feel this is really misleading for people not finding an authentic tantric path, and also contributing to that feeling of, okay, well, Tantra is just having sex with incense on. So yeah, I think that was why I was curious.
If that's Tantra, I've done that. Just kidding. I mean, no, I really have, but I understand that that's not really Tantra. Well, it's up to each person with what their truth is. And yeah, I can see where this gets into kind of that conversation of what is sacred to someone. And I agree with you. I think that like I said, I've never actually been to a gathering in this way that you've shared about, but it's like, call a spade a spade. If it's, because I think that it probably could be damaging to people. Like if someone went through some kind of trauma and they thought they were going to some, let's say they did have access to, I don't know, some podcasts that you've done, and they've read some books, and they have this idea that Tantra is this sacred, there's an intention, there's clear boundaries. I think boundaries have something to do with it. It's not a sex party or a play party, and then they go to one of these things and it ends up being that, because so much sexual abuse and things like that has to do with the secrecy, the trickery, the deception, things like that. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing that you're pointing to, for sure.
Yeah. And even, you know, even if it's a sex party or a play party, if it's a properly facilitated event, that also has some teaching about boundaries.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
In my world, I'm like,
yeah.
if that's not happening, please leave.
Right. Yeah. Addendum to what I was just saying. I think those things have a place for all of it. And I'm not sitting here saying that sex parties are bad and they're whatever.
Oh, no.
But yes, all of these things have to be or ought to be, I guess, really, really made clear for all parties involved, for sure.
Yeah.
Whether it's a sex party or a Tantra temple night.
Yeah. Yes.
How many of those temple nights have you hosted or facilitated? Just curious.
Not too much, because I have this ambivalent relationship with it. When I moved to Costa Rica, actually beginning of last year, I did 3 events in Nosara, in that area. And maybe a little bit more. I did, maybe 4. And then, you know, in my retreats, I do 7-day retreats. And at some point we also, like, we have temple every night, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have a sex party. Basically, we never have a sex party. But for me, a temple is a ritual space. So basically, when I say we have temple night, I'm opening the container for a ritual to happen with intentionality, and that might include some sexual practices, but usually everything is optional. So I would never facilitate someone having a sexual interaction with somebody else, because I never, who am I to say, okay, you have to partner up with that person and you have to do this, that's for me, that's a very, very hard limit that I would never do. So it's really somehow also self-facilitated space if we go into this kind of, okay, let's explore pleasure, touch, and these things in a conscious way. And it's, it's really important to have some trauma work and shadow work before that, because entering a space where people openly practice their sexuality is very beautiful, actually. It's like my first ever temple night I attended. After that, I was like, wow, sexuality is actually so innocent. And all of this is beautiful. Like all of the different expressions that people find for themselves to authentically live their sexuality is actually innocent and beautiful. And we humans, we put so much shame and taboo around it. Wow, why are we even doing that? So it has a really, really big healing component in it, but it is also, of course, triggering, because most people are not used to it. And then also, if you have an attraction to someone and that someone is hooking up with somebody else and like like all your stories, basically your shadow stories, are coming to the surface and running. So it needs to be very well prepared, I feel.
So is there a screening process of some kind, or a interview, like a conversation or an application that people fill out to?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have not just facilitated temple nights, but if I would do so, I would have a screening for everyone in the beginning to see if they are ready to enter the space I want to create. And that's also what we did in like a year ago when I was facilitating. So we had like 3 different stages. We had like introduction temple for like complete beginners, and we had like temple where we're like, okay, you have to at least have to have this kind of experience, otherwise you cannot participate in this. Because of course, the more experienced you are and the more comfortable you feel, the easier it is for you to express. And if there's a lot of people that are very uncomfortable with your full expression, it kind of changes the energy.
How do you talk to your family about this? Or do you? I'm curious if like, is that me?
Well,
You're not hiding anything. It's all, stuff.
No. Well, to be honest, in the beginning, I mean, I'm really also, I'm a taboo breaker. And I'm not polarizing all the time, but I did a lot. So for example, I worked a lot with my menstrual blood in the past. I painted with it. I put it on my body. I posted pictures of it. I drink it. So, and I talk about it very openly. And it's just, also through my trauma understanding, I realized, okay, I'm just going to be who I am authentically. And if people don't resonate with that and they don't understand and they can't hold it, that's okay. And then they're not my people. And in a way, of course, this is like hard to say for my family. And interestingly, my mother, she follows me on Instagram. So she's watching all my stories. And, I feel like, I think 3 years ago, there was a moment I was like, I was asking, I was like, how is that for you? Just to, see what I'm talking about. And she was just like, well, I don't really understand any of the things that you are doing and why you're doing it, but seems like it makes you happy. So I'm okay with it. And I was just like, okay, cool, fine. She doesn't need to understand in depth. And if she asks me or if she's interested, I have nothing to hide. So I'll tell her very openly. And the rest of my family, I actually have no idea what they're thinking. They're all following me on social media, but I don't know.
Oh boy. You could do a poll on Instagram. If you're my family, what do you think if I'm what's your opinion on me? How do you feel?
Do I make you feel uncomfortable?
Is this poll uncomfortable for you? Is this an awkward survey? But I think what you said about your mom is really, that's how I feel about my parents too. They might not, like when I tried to explain to my parents the night before I went on a heroic dose journey with mushrooms, like they were just basically, they were supportive, but they really didn't want me to do that. And I mean, that was a learning experience for me of like, okay, maybe I don't need them to understand. I don't need them to understand me. And even though, well, even it sounds like your mom too, they might not understand, but they still have a love, and there's still a connection there. And that's what that feels like real soul and real family to me. So it's sweet that you have that, and that I have that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. And what about, I know we connected a little bit in the car on the ride up on this, but I wanted to ask you where you at now as far as different offerings that you have, or things that you're thinking about putting together right now.
Yeah, so basically I'm really focusing on in-person events at the moment. So for everyone that's English speaking, I have an retreat in July in Portugal that's going to be in English. It's a 7-day container. It's called Rising in Love. It's basically a journey through the chakras. So it's a tantric experience. We start at the bottom and we go up each day. And it's an initiation into your true self and into various tantric practices that I teach. And it's my most, like, I'm so excited about this retreat. Like, I did it last year and it was just like the most epic thing ever, at least for me. And I had like, it's just, I just love this. People come in on the first day and I see them and I see what they bring and how they are, and then 7 days later they go out of the retreat and there's a completely different person, and usually like so much more bliss and happiness, and it's really, I love this. And I also love the group, the work with the group, because everyone is in the group has signed up for this exact experience. And everyone is serving everyone, in triggering or in supporting or inspiring. And that's just like the most incredible tool for me, just being in a group and moving through this process together. So I love that. So that's going to happen in July in Portugal, in an incredible retreat venue that I also love so much in the south of Portugal. And other than that, I don't have any offerings in English other than one-on-one work. And I won't also be doing any online workshops. So if you want to do one-on-one with me, you can reach out to me and do that. And I'm still in the process of figuring out if I want to offer tantric things in Costa Rica. A lot of people have been asking me and kind of requesting it. So I feel like there's a certain pull, but I still feel a little bit hesitant because of the intensity of the work that I do. And I don't know if I want to mess with my community in a way, you know what I mean? So
yeah, if there's a way to get that,
my process.
Yeah, I hear that, because it's powerful, and yeah, it may or may not be something that you feel into a way that could really be bringing it in, that feels like it's a heart yes for you and for everyone else. I could see that.
It's just
when you were
a very new experience for me, because I've never lived somewhere where I would also, except teaching yoga classes, but that's different, where I would facilitate these kinds of events, and people that are, my friends, and, I see every day come to my events. I usually have people come to my events, and of course we're kind of having a good relationship and our friends, but they're not my neighbors. Well, I don't see them every other day at Ecstatic Dance or the market or so. So this is just like, it's new for me. And I'm like, okay, will this work? How will this work? So I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
When you were talking about your retreat, which sounds incredible, the first thing I thought of was the Drake song, because you said you start at the first chakra and then all the way up. And I thought how funny it would be if you played the Drake song at the end of the retreat. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, obviously you're probably gonna do that.
I'm gonna remember that and do that in July. And I'm gonna give credits to you.
All right. Okay. And I'll your retreat and your Instagram, I'll put it in the notes too. to our
Perfect.
conversation, but we still got a little bit of time left. Is there anything else on your heart that you feel called to speak to share in the moment?
Yeah, I feel like I just want to say, everyone who listens to this, even if it's not with me, if you really desire and dare to live a life of full potential and happiness and fulfillment, try a tantric way. Like, try an authentic tantric way, and go for it. And if you dare to go deep into yourself and stand in the fire and burn off all that fucking shadows and, you know, all the layers that are like around your true self, it's so worth it. Like, I would never, I wouldn't change any, I mean, I have no regrets anyway, but I wouldn't change anything. Like, this way of living and this practices and the tantric path, it's really one of the most incredible things that I discovered that really just up-leveled my quality of life and the way I experience the world. And yeah, there's sometimes also a lot of intensity that is uncomfortable and more on the spectrum of, like, you know, oh, this is challenging, but at the same time, I also get that intensity in the things I love and in pleasure. You know, it's just expanded to ways I would have never imagined being possible. So I just want to encourage anyone who hears this, like, go for it, it's worth it, it's epic. And yeah, it's basically, it's being alive, you know. Like, it's, for me, this is like, I'm really alive, I am living, I'm not just on autopilot, like running around not being aware of what's going on. I'm really alive. And I really believe this is what we are here for, and why we got this like incredible body to experience all of it with awareness. And yeah, just go for it. And there's so much more to say, you know, about Tantra. I mean, if we talk about in the end, it's also about energy and learning how to contain and control your energy, especially also your sexual energy.
Sure, yeah.
Which is life force energy. So it's the most potent thing you can actually cultivate as a human being, and using that, you know, for your sexual pleasure, but also for creativity, for longevity, for like, it's just, yeah, it's so fascinating. And yeah, so I think that was important.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question about this too. I thought of it as you were sharing. Have you encountered someone where they want to explore this, but because of some kind of religious, some identification with one of their religions, that seems to be like a block to them? Because I guess I'm just imagining that someone, among other things, but particularly maybe a more common one would be someone feels like, oh, I want to do this, I want to have this experience, but maybe their religious beliefs or thoughts seem to conflict with their desire to engage in something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. I personally haven't encountered anyone with that problem or with that conflict, with that inner conflict. I feel probably people that feel very religious in whatever way just don't feel very drawn to that path. But I can assume how it, you know, I can see how it might be an inner conflict of going that way. And yeah, my truth, you know, if it comes back to sexuality and sexual energy, it's really the suppression of it, because we all have it, right? So we're animals. So we have the instinct to procreate, and we have sexual desire, and we all have it. So to suppress it is actually the worst thing you can do, because that is going to cause, you know, a lot of harm in your own system, and therefore also with the world you're engaging with, you know, in various ways. And I think it's a really, really big issue when it comes to, you know, sexual abuse, rape, even just aggression, you know, or if we look at, you know, work situations where there's sexism, where there's objectification of women, of the feminine body, and all these things. For me, that is so much related to unfulfilled sexual desire and repressed sexual energy. So I also truly believe there's so much healing potential in that, if we get to, get a consciousness into this field for many, many people, being more conscious about that energy and also how to use it, you know, like teach them how to use it.
It seems like your background with psychology and trauma integration is what really supports the way to work with sexuality and to liberate, or to help that come into wholeness. And yeah, I imagine that it requires you to be very discerning when you're working with these sorts of things as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And also for women, you know, it's just like there's so much pleasure a woman can experience in her body, in her sexuality. And so many women are not connected to that because they have experienced some sort of abuse, like sexually, emotionally, whatever. And they're just disconnected from their bodies. And they like, so many women cannot orgasm. Like they just can't, you know, or they can only have clit orgasms, which is, you know, a nice thing to have, but there is so much more in terms of that, you know, I feel is very exciting to explore for me, and I hope for a lot of women out there, because I also feel that, you know, the suppression of the female sexuality especially is also causing a lot of harm in our society, because women that are disconnected from their body and from their sexuality are essentially disconnected from their inherent wisdom and power. So yeah,
I want to talk about orgasms.
yes, I love talking about orgasms. It's one of my favorite topics.
Okay, all right, so I got case study for you, me.
Love it.
I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna go right in and share this. So I've heard, especially in the realm of Tantra, men saying that they have, and maybe elsewhere as well, have an orgasm without ejaculating, without, and to me, I mean, I've felt really beautiful, incredible, connected experiences. But the peak of it comes when, you know, no pun intended, I come. And so, yeah, I'm curious what that is, like, what's going on, and if you know the way, what is the way to have this? From what I understand, it seems like there's men that are having an orgasm similar. I thought of this when you're talking about women, because of the amount of pleasure that they can receive. And then I started to meet some dudes here and there, not like frequently, but men that are talking about having these full body orgasms. What is that all about without ejaculation?
Yeah, so it's basically, it is a very tantric practice because it is about the sublimation of their energy. So when you ejaculate, you basically giving away life force energy, because that sperm is created to create a new life. And if that is not what's going to happen, it just goes into waste. So the idea is, okay, if I'm not consciously trying to procreate, I am going to conserve this energy and use it for me, for my longevity, and also for my extended pleasure. Because especially when you orgasm and ejaculate as a man, afterwards, your body is like releasing hormones that is basically like, well done, good job, boy, you did it. And then you get tired, and you can't continue to have sex. So basically what this is about is, once you are conserving your own energy, your life force energy. Basically what tantrikas say is that every time you ejaculate, you lose some minutes to hours of your life. So conserving that energy for yourself, and then through not ejaculating, you're actually tapping into the real sensitivity of your body and your lingam, and you can sublimate that orgasmic energy that you create and bring it basically from the lower chakras to the higher chakras, so it moves to your whole body, and you can just keep going. So basically you can just, you're riding the wave, of course. You're not like, like high-speed fucking for 2 or 3 hours, but you're riding the wave, and you can just have sex, penetrative sex all night long, and just keep going and just dive into this orgasmic energy over and over again. And you can have breaks, and I mean, you're human, you need to pee, you need to drink something, but you just like, that wave is really just continuing. And yeah, and that brings you also, when we talk about Kundalini energy, it brings you into this state of ecstasy, and basically that orgasmic energy is Kundalini energy. So it's actually also an access point to God in you, to feel God inside of you and that energy. And I have never, I have a manual where it's all written down how to learn this as a man, but I've never taught this to anyone because I don't have a penis. I have no physical experience of that. So it doesn't feel right to me, like me teaching men how to do this, because I just, theoretically I know, but practically I don't. And that's actually the benefit of being a woman, because I don't need to learn how to, not ejaculate anymore. I just need, quote unquote, need to open my body into surrender and to receive internal orgasms. So basically the clit orgasm is an explosive orgasm, and it's not, you're not losing as much life force energy as you do as a man when you ejaculate, but it's the same. After the clit orgasm, I'm like, my energy goes down. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done, I could go to sleep. But if I have internal orgasm, it goes up anyway, like the energy is already like going up in that direction, so it's implosive, and I can just keep going. So once I'm opened up, I'm basically that multiple I can have multiple orgasms, like over and over again, and just keep going. But this is also something women need to learn, because most of us, we're numb, or we have pain points inside the vagina, and we don't trust our partners, we cannot surrender, and then all of this is not working. So it's also a process of getting there. Yeah.
Babe, I'm taking notes. So for the men, because it seems like the women can come to you. You got the answers, or at least you can point them in that direction. And since I'm not going to ask you to share your manual, since you don't have it in the chat, but I'm curious if there is men or practitioners that you would point men to look into this stuff, or to get a hold of a manual, including me.
I actually, I get this question so often, and I don't really, I mean, in Germany, I know someone, but he's teaching in German. But in the English speaking world, I don't know anyone that I could really recommend doing this kind of work. I can recommend you a book. It's called The Multi-Orgasmic Man. It's by Mantak Chia. So it's not the Indian tradition, it's the Tao, the Chinese tantric tradition. He's still alive. He's like one of the last living authentic tantric teachers. So that's a good book for men to start with.
I'm going to put in the link. What is it called?
The Multi-Orgasmic Man.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't really know men who teach this to other men. It's I think it's happening, but I don't,
I will say this. Oh, God.
I also want to say, I've never had a partner that had fully control over this also. So I've never met an actual man in the flesh that I was also engaging with sexually that was able of doing this. So
You hear that, gentlemen? He's yet to meet you. I hear you. And this is a book that I started reading. I just pulled it up like a year or two ago, but for some reason it didn't quite resonate. So it's not really necessarily a recommendation. However, I have heard other men in Costa Rica speak highly of this fellow. And I think he was here. And to be really honest, I didn't give this book enough of a chance to really see if it would do the job. Or for whatever reason, that point in my life, it wasn't resonating. It's called Conscious Cock, the Empowered Sexuality Manual for Men, Healthy Masculinity, Sex Education, and Communication Tools. And the author is Christopher Lovestone. Christopher with a K. Have you heard of this?
I heard about the book. I have not read it. I mean, I don't have a conscious cock. But so I don't know anything about it, but I've heard of it. Yeah. But I also don't know that guy. So
yeah, right. I don't even know if he has a conscious cock. I would assume he does, since he's writing a book about it.
Hopefully he has. Hopefully he has one.
Yeah.
And hopefully someone is, like benefiting from it.
Hope that as well. Maybe multiple. He's going to.
Maybe multiple people.
Wow. Well, this is I had a lot of fun talking to you today.
Likewise.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, everything that what we mentioned, I'll link up for your retreat and your Instagram and anything else. Is there anything else that feels present, that wants to be shared in the moment?
No, I think that's it. Just dare to be alive fully. That's just the message. Because it's worth it. In my truth.
I agree. In my truth. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much for having me, Christopher. This was such a blast. I had so much pleasure. I was so much enjoying this conversation. So thank you for that.
I did too. Full pleasure. Enjoy. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.